Welcome to the Brodart Tell Me More Diverse Voices webinar. Today, you're going to hear from four amazing authors that will be sharing their stories with you. Our moderator, Carol Levers, is the executive director from the Kansas City Library, Kansas City Public Library. She manages 5 public libraries, a fleet of 3 mobile libraries, and 40 school libraries. Over to you, Carol.
Thank you, Alanita. Thank you to Brodart and some of our sponsors, IVP, Bethany House, Revell, and Hachette for making this possible. As Alanita explained, my name is Carol Levers. I'm deeply honored being asked to moderate this Diverse Voices series. I think it's the 3rd year in a row that Brodart has asked me to moderate, and I'm always excited to do that and be able to share options to our readers out there, but there's a lot of readers, to choose from. So just a little bit about myself. I grew up in South Africa under apartheid, and I know what it's like for voices not to be heard. Books that add a person of color as protagonists were banned in South Africa. Books about Nelson Mandela and all political prisoners were banned. So growing up, I had no idea what he even looked like until there were talks of his release. My husband was jailed for having a person on his person a copy of the United Nations Freedom Charter, and that is similar as the Bill of Rights. In '89, we left South Africa for USA and filed for political asylum. So after going through a 10-year application process, we were sworn in as citizens in 1999. So you can identify with me when I say I detest the notion of banning books, because it just keeps everybody in the dark. The more you read, the more you know. So I'm always excited to expose and share books, and to me is put a book in a kid's hand, immaterial. Let the kid decide it. So I am so excited to introduce you all to our 2024 Diverse Voices panel. Dr. Grace G. Sun Kim, Tony Shiloh, Jenny Erlingson, and Julianne Randall. So all 4 bring their own individual perspectives to share with us today, and we will give them about 10 minutes each to answer some questions, and we will have some time at the end for any additional questions you may want to ask. So, Dr. Grace G. Sun, when did you know you wanted to write this book?
Oh, I'm not sure if I knew if there was an exact moment. I've been writing a lot of other books. This is my 24th book. And so there have been a lot of incidents of me. I was born in Korea and we immigrated to Canada. So I grew up in Canada, did kindergarten all the way up to my PhD. And then I live now in the US teaching here. So I think most of my life I've experienced racism or sexism. So when the racism gets piled up and up and up, and as a theologian, trying to make sense of it, why is this happening? Why is a larger society engaged in racism? That all kind of culminated for me to write this particular book. I was trying to make sense of what is allowing this to happen and how it continues to happen. So as a theologian and, as a scholar, for me, it was important to tie racism into how we view who God is. So I think much of Christian history in the last 2,000 years have taught that God is an old white man sitting up in the sky. I think whether you're Christian or not, religious or not, that is the image that is taught to the world. And so that's the image I grew up in with, and I never challenged it until recently when I was before I started to write the book, I was challenging this notion. As people of faith or, people who are religious, no one will say that they have ever seen God And so for Christians who say they've never seen God, none of us have been able to, but for some reason, we all have this white male God. And so that in itself then legitimizes this racism and allows white people to maintain their power and allows them to have this racism within our society. And so this construct of whiteness, um, allows white people to maintain their white privilege and their white supremacy. So that's how I kind of began writing this book.
And my apologies, I have to add that Grace G. Sun received her Master's of Divinity from Knox College University in Toronto and a PhD from the University of Toronto. And she's also a professor of theology at Earlham School of Religion. And she mentioned that she's authored 24 books. If you go to her website, you will get the titles. I'm not going to spend time in reading that, and you can read that. She served on the board of directors for the American Academy of Religion as an at-large director, and she also served on the American Academy of Religion, AAR. So she is honored to be included in the Englewood Review of Books list of the 10 important theologians. So I apologize, I didn't add that, but we'll do that for the next. The other question that we have, is there a specific message you want to share? And I think you kind of encapsulated that within the answer that you had. So maybe we can go, and if you want to, you can just add it again, but we'll go to another question is, what is your writing process like?
Oh, so do you want me to answer both of them?
Yeah, the one I think you did answer a little bit, but
Okay.
so that's the, but you can do both, yes.
Yeah, I think the message is really we have to challenge our own traditions, whatever faith tradition or religious tradition, and be able to critique it. So I offer that in this book. It's very highly accessible book. It's not an academic book to be used by scholars. It is for people, out in the pews, or just those who are just curious about spirituality or who God is. I have friends who have like a strict writing method. They will get up and start writing. For me, I don't have any particular method at all. And it's always surprises everyone that I'm able to still write. So I just write in my free time. And for books like this, When God Became White, I did write it because I've been so upset with the racism that is present in our society. So some of my books are driven by personal experiences and anger that I may have experienced. And I do weave in a lot of my own stories, especially into this book. And if you've ever heard Anne Lamott also writes about her life and people around her. And she says, well, if you didn't want me to write about you, you should have been a bit kinder. So that may be the driving or how I write. I don't put names of people, but when there are experiences that are oppressive and damaging, then that kind of drives me to write. So that's kind of like the writing process for me. I have no strict timeline or, deadline. I just write as I feel that day.
That's interesting, and this is just a sideline. When I read your book, took me back again 30 years, more years ago in South Africa, because a lot of people, missionaries came from the United States to South Africa and to the whole world, Africa, as I say. And one missionary, she was retired, and when I came back to the United States, I spoke to her and talked to her about what happened, and they didn't do anything about it in South Africa. And she cried. She said, they couldn't do anything because their hands were tied. And I just said, okay, no big deal. It's, we fight our own battles. But what she told me was that they were told to go to darkest Africa. And of course, they went to South Africa by ship. When they got off the ship, she couldn't believe her eyes because she says ladies and gentlemen were dressed to the T. Ladies with hats and gloves were waiting to welcome her. I don't think what she must have thought that she's going to get people half naked with, we weren't civilized or something like that, because that's the concept that the missionaries have to go and bring the gospel to, darkest Africa. And then they found there was a religion there, there was people with culture, but it just brought back all those memories. And I don't want to prolong your book, but because we have to go, the thing is, have you always wanted to be a writer?
Oh, no, I never thought of myself as a writer. And as I shared, I was an immigrant. So I was 5 years old when we came to Canada. I struggled with learning the English language. And, many times I would just fake and because I didn't understand what people were saying. So it has always been a struggle. And so I never thought I'll be a writer. And as a scholar, you're kind of expected to write either articles or book chapters or a book. I just thought, because of that expectation, I started writing. But then I realized the importance of books. Well, I always knew the importance of books, but the importance of writing because, when we think about racism, especially in the US, it is this dichotomy or this binary between black and white. So anybody in between, Asian Americans, Latinx, Native Americans, we get kind of pushed to the side and our issues get lost. So I find it so important for me to voice these concerns and to write about it. So that's what drives me to continue to write, but I never thought of myself as that I will become a writer.
Thank you. We're going to go to Toni Shiloh. Toni is a wife, a mom, and award-winning Christian contemporary romance author. Her novel, In Search of a Prince, won the first ever Christie Amplify Award. It has also been praised by Oprah Daily, Pop Sugar, Library Journal, and Booklist, and is a Parable bestseller. Her books have won the Celia Award and have been finalists for the Carol Award and the Holt Medallion. As a member of American Christian Fiction Writers, Toni loves connecting with readers and authors alike via social media. And you can learn more of Toni Shiloh at tonishiloh.com. Toni, all yours. Please just give us a little bit of your background, and also when did you know you wanted to write this book?
So thank you very much for having me today. I appreciate the introduction. Um, so a bit about me is I was one of those people who didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up, kind of thing. So I joined the military straight out of high school. I did 6 years in the Air Force. And it wasn't until my enlistment was up that I went back and I got a degree and I fell in love with writing. Um, just the idea that you can reach different people groups. As you tell stories, you can connect, you can see how, when it comes down to it, like we're all searching for the same things. We want to be seen, we want to be known, we want to be loved. As a person of faith, I wanted to show that through contemporary romance stories, just about, people finding each other and then also discovering how God's love works in their lives. And so when it came to writing A Run at Love, the thing I couldn't get out of my head was a picture of a African American woman riding a horse. And I could clearly see she was in horse country. And to me, that meant Kentucky, but I didn't know how she ended up there. Um, and you guys both kind of alluded it to talking is everyone has a preconceived notion about certain areas. We develop biases because of what we see on TV. And I love it, basically breaking those down in my writing. And so I wanted to know how she ended up in Kentucky, what her backstory was. And I just kind of sat and spent time with this character, and she wouldn't leave. She kept talking to me, and so I knew I had to write her story. Um, and she wants to own a horse that makes it to the Kentucky Derby. So she's not a jockey. She's not a trainer, but she's actually a horse owner. And it's not something I've really ever heard in the Kentucky Derby world or seen. And so I just had a lot of fun exploring that through my research and writing the story.
What kind of research do you do, and how long do you spend researching before beginning a book?
That's a great question. It really honestly depends on the topic. In this case, I knew absolutely nothing about horses or horse racing. I checked out all sorts of different books at the library about horses themselves, raising a horse, training. I was looking at different websites like Churchill Downs, Keeneland in Kentucky. Um, it wasn't actually until I felt like it was a divine appointment. I went to a reader um, meeting in Michigan, and I was sitting with a bunch of readers who had read one of my other books, and they asked me what I was working on. I was like, oh, I'm trying to, do research for this story, and I'm just having a tough time with the horses. And there was a horse enthusiast at the table. She hooked me up with a person who actually trains horses and had partial ownership in a horse that was going to be running for the Derby. And so she was the one who looked over all of my stories to see like what I got right, what I got wrong, what I needed to tweak. And so she was the one who told me that I actually did my research well and that I had actually learned something, even though I still felt like I struggled with all the information.
What is the most difficult part of your artistic process?
That's a good question. I think it's balancing how the story goes with reader expectations. Um, I know a lot of readers expect to get faith from me and clean romance, romance without anything past kissing. Um, and sometimes also I feel like they want more lighthearted moments. And because this book deals with the Kentucky Derby and racism in that area, as well as my heroine is a transracial adoptee, I knew that there were going to be tough topics and I had to balance it with, lighthearted moments, witty banter. So I think I feel that tension a lot when I'm writing of how the story should go versus reader expectations.
Fantastic. So what is the favorite part of this book?
I think the favorite part is definitely the romance. My hero is all in for the heroine. They've been best friends since childhood, since she was adopted. And all he's ever seen is her. So just seeing the moments where he shows up to support her, to support her dreams and encourage her, because he ends up being the horse trainer for her horse. I just really enjoy those moments, because I think we've all felt that in real life when someone shows up for you and supports your dreams, and it's such an encouragement, and it, fills those places in you that you think people don't see, but when someone takes notice, you feel loved. And so I really enjoyed their relationship and how it developed.
Thank you. We're going to move on to Jenny Erlingson. Jenny is an Alabama-born author and speaker of Nigerian descent. She lives in Iceland with her Viking husband and their 4 adorable, feisty children. From there, Jenny continues her passion for writing, creating and encouraging others. When she's not running after the kids or ministering alongside her husband, she can be found writing deeply. You can learn more of Jenny at jennierlingson.com. Welcome, Jenny. When did you know you wanted to write this book?
I think it was kind of subconscious, excuse me, because my parents tell me that I scribbled all the time as a child, and I think all children scribble everywhere. But I think that continued for me, and I think as I read growing up, I mean, the book fairs at school were my favorite part of the school year, of going with the meager amount of money that I had and bringing back something. I actually grew up, my childhood was spent in Knoxville, Tennessee a lot. And if you've heard of McKay's Used Books, which is kind of spread different places. So I love going to the bookstore and getting all that. So I think reading all those books, I mean, summertime, I'd either be playing outside all day or spend the next day all day reading Babysitter's Club and so many different other book series. So I think seeing these words put together instilled a passion in me that I didn't really know was fully there until I think the feedback from mentors, from other adults, from teachers who would say, hey, this assignment's written really well, or this story that you entered for with our class, it did well. And so I think that feedback from other people began to reiterate and reaffirm for me that this passion for reading and writing was actually something that I could follow through with.
Okay, is there a specific message you want to share?
Oh gosh. I think it's yes in a way and maybe no. And I say only the no because I really long for what I share to be authentic and organic. And so I don't want to always necessarily lead with a message, but when I write my prayers, always like, God, would you just breathe on these words? And so that whatever you need to give to whoever's reading this will come about. And so, but then, yes, ultimately, I want there to be messages of hope. I want to encourage people at the root level. And so that means that I'm not into band-aid solutions. I'm not into temporary things. Like it's usually like, okay, what's the root of where you're at? And like, how can I help with that if it's my time, my season to help. And so that comes out in the other nonfiction books I've written, but then in this contemporary romance, it's fun to see that through the characters come out organically, come out authentically, hopefully, and that message of hope and encouragement and some of the themes that are in there come out in I hope a natural way, in a fun way.
So what is the most difficult part of your artistic process?
Oh my gosh. The next one, I think. It's the next one. It's like, and I'm here holding, I literally just opened the box today. My publisher, I'm grateful they sent half of the books to Iceland to me. And I'm looking at this, and as I work on the next one, I think, how am I going to get there again? So I think that is the part. And I know, you start off with the draft and all of those and the rounds of edits, but I'm looking at it like, almost can I do that? So I think that imposter syndrome, that fear, pushing yourself to keep on going every step because it all matters and it all counts and it will get to the final product. But it is like, do I have what it takes to, complete the next one, basically?
What is your favorite part of this book?
Oh man. My obvious answer is probably the main characters, but honestly, I really love the town that I created. I'm from Huntsville, Alabama, and I have it in the book, but I made a fictional town and kind of want to get stuff wrong and for people to come after me. So I just love the community that was created, and I'm seeing reader feedback about that too. So from the extended families, from community restaurant and shop owners to cousins to all those different elements, I think that it's a really rich and authentic and diverse environment that has been created for the book.
Okay, what is the inspiration for the story?
Oh, this inspiration. I think multiple things. The one thing, the seed of the idea came as I was watching, if you know about like the Chosen TV series, they had a lot of behind the scene, and I've always been one with movies like if it's just the movie, I feel like I got cheated on the Blu-ray or the DVD. I want the behind the scenes, right? I want the deleted scenes and everything like that. So but The Chosen was showing a lot of the cast and crew and the process of putting together the film. And I thought, what is it like between like these industry professionals? Because especially with hairstylists or stylists or makeup artists, you are in somebody's like, you're in their face, you're near them for hours upon end, even before filming may start. And so what kind of relationships develop between them? And is that always good? Is it positive? Is it toxic? But can something genuine and authentic develop between people in those situations, especially if you have someone maybe who is behind the scenes, someone who is more public, but can they give and support each other and maybe be the answer the other is looking for? And so that's kind of what's in place here, second chances, and just really being also inspired by how I grew up, child of Nigerian immigrants, and we were in a lot of different places and around lots of different people. I mean, friends from the Philippines and from other African nations. And so to have that childhood growing up, and to also have it in my churches, but then not always seeing it represented in the books that we read, especially in Christian publishing, traditional Christian publishing. So that even inspired me, even as far as even her face on the cover. That was really something that I really wanted to see, because I wanted people to be able to see her face and to know that without having to wonder, is this book for me? Does this represent me? And so that was a huge part of the inspiration for even this process.
Thank you. And now we have Julian Randall. He is a living queer Black poet from Chicago. He has received fellowships from Callaloo, BOAAT, and the Watering Hole. He is the recipient of a Pushcart Prize. Julian is the curator of Winter Tangerine's Lineage of Mirrors. His work has been published in New York Times Magazine, Plowshares, and Poetry, and anthologized in Bettering American Poetry, Nepantla, and Furious Flower. He is a candidate for the MFA in Poetry at Ole Miss. His first book, Refuse, that came out in 2018, is the winner of the 2017 Cave Canem Poetry Prize. He talks a lot about poems on Twitter. If you want to hear more of Julian, the poet, he's at Twitter at Julian the Poet. Welcome, Juliet.
Wonderful. Hi, Carol. How you doing?
I am just wonderful. When did you know you wanted to write the book?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you for having me today. Thank you, everybody who's here today, everybody who's going to be on the who's going to be on the recording later. My name is Julian Randall, and I wrote this book, The Dead Don't Need Reminding. It is a collection of essays that braids two interpersonal stories, one being the story of my own emergence from harrowing, life-threatening depression from 2015 to 2021, honestly. And also the story of my great-grandfather, who was an incredibly light-skinned Black man. And I learned that story of him being an incredibly light-skinned Black man in Mississippi who passed for white for a living moments before I was about to end my own life, honestly. And so I knew that I wanted to write this book when I set foot in Oxford, Mississippi. I knew that I had a story that I needed to tell, and I knew that there are certain stories that we can never stop telling. And so I built the book around both of those things, this idea of reclamation, but also an idea of how pop culture can build a bridge between what we see and what we experience and what others can see and experience alongside us.
Wonderful. So have you always wanted to be a writer?
Aside from a very ill-fated desire to be president when I was in high school, I believe that most of my adult life I've been a writer. As you were kind enough to say, my tradition and my training is as a poet. Writ large, I have also expanded into children's novels. So I've written 2 different children's novels that can be purchased right now with Pilar Ramirez series. And later this year, I will be putting out another middle grade novel called The Chainbreaker. So this is my debut in nonfiction.
So what is the most difficult part of your artistic process?
Oh, I swore that I'd have an answer to this, but I think that for me, it is the editing. It is to me, revision is a bit of a spiritual practice, right? I believe that it was Kiese Layman who said, if revision is truly all it is said to be, then it is all God has ever asked of believers, right? And so to me, the revision of a story, the revision of a piece of writing is to re-see myself, right? To re-see what were my instincts, what were my choices, what do I want to say and put out into the world in a way that's going to be lasting. And so I can definitely get a little too deep for the intro on that when the time comes. But writ large, yeah, I think that it is the editing, but I'm grateful to have great editors.
Wonderful. How do you select the names of your characters?
How do I select the names of my characters? Okay, so within the course of the fiction that I write, I often name characters after people in my own life and or video game characters that I made up myself. Sometimes, actually, in every book that I've ever put out in the fiction category, all of the aunt characters are named after prominent Black women writers, and all of the mask characters are named after prominent Black politicians.
What kind of research do you do, and how long do you spend researching before beginning a book?
So for The Dead Don't Need Reminding, the research process really begins in 2016 and concludes around 2021 when I finally am able to make it down to Greenville, which is the town that my great-grandfather was run out of when it was discovered that he was not in fact a white man, and they were told that they could never return. And if they ever were seen in the town limits again, they would be tarred and feathered to death. So that research process begins in 2016, extends on into a trip to Water Valley, which is 53 miles away from Oxford, Mississippi, and the first place that you can find any record of my great-grandfather at all, and potentially perhaps his grave, but it is unclear due to the town's records being burned within a month of his leaving. The city clerk's office and the city town hall both burned down. And so that research process then extends out into eventually going down to Greenville. So it's a journey of about 18 essays and 135 miles between Oxford and Greenville.
Okay. Is there a specific message you want to share?
The specific message that I want to share is that Black folks are depressed. Black folks can be depressed, yo. Black folks can be depressed. Black folks can be queer. Black folks can be non-binary. Black folks can have long and storied histories in the South that are not only painful, that are not only the threat of our deaths, that it is ultimately a project of being able to see each other. And I believe that media can bring us together. And so I was able to use that as a bridge to try and connect people to somebody who may be going through something and might be about to make the choice that I almost made.
Okay. Well, we have quite a few minutes left. If there's any other insights that you would like to share with us, any of you, just let us know, or we'll be waiting for questions from our audience, our participants.
We don't have any questions, but anybody want to talk a little bit more about their book?
Sure, I can talk a bit more.
Thanks.
Yeah, I guess mine is the only kind of non-novel in the panel among the panelists. So it was interesting to hear everyone else's, how they came up with the book. I think for me, and probably from some of the other panelists, it is a lot of our inner struggles that bear fruit into our work. So, because most of my other books before this have dealt with, within Christianity, the Holy Spirit. So I looked at Chi, the Asian concept of spirit, and tied it in with the Western understanding. And this was one of my first ones that really deals with God per se and not the spirit. So it has been very exciting in this new journey to move away from the spirit, although I do bring in the spirit at the end of this book, to really kind of delve into who God can be. And, a lot of people, it came out in May, and on social media, I know people haven't read it, but a lot of like white men were commenting that, we don't need such a book like this. And, what are you trying to do? Very nasty comments just by the title of the book. But, it's nothing, I'm just exposing some of the racism and how that is tied in with how we view God, and then that our view of God that perpetuates and allows this racism and this concept of whiteness to continue. So it is this ongoing cycle. So I'm just trying to expose it and then move towards how else can we view God, whom none of us have been able to see. And many of these other ways, so if you read it yourself, they're all biblically based. So I felt, it's not And a Black medical doctor who reads a lot of my books just reviewed it and said it's not the book that you think it is, where she's going to go after people. That's not what I do, but I think that's what some people on social media thought I was going to do. But it's really my kind of own struggle, my own story, and coming to understand God, not as a white man, but in other ways that are also within the Christian tradition and within the Old and the New Testament. So I really wanted to share that because I think people, just by the title of it, When God Became White, people get really uptight about it. But when I submitted it to InterVarsity Press, this is my second book with them. They changed the first book to the title, and then this one I submitted the title as Whiteness. I like short book titles. It's easy for me to remember. And then they changed it. And, you struggle, but the publisher usually wins. But I think this title was genius. I think Whiteness people wouldn't have quite understood. And InterVarsity also said there's so many people writing on whiteness, people won't know what you're talking about. So I think that was good. So they came up with this one, and I think it's really exciting for me. So I really hope that people will pick it up and read it. And I know many study groups are already using the book because they've been messaging me. And at the end of each chapter, there are study questions. So they asked me to put those in. So I'm hoping that people will be able to use it and be challenged and see how they can view God in different ways away from the white male God.
Thank you. Anybody else want to
Just
talk?
have a question for everyone. What surprised you most while writing your book? Who would like to answer that?
We can ask each one. Tony?
So for me, I think what surprised me the most about writing the book was how excited I got about the Kentucky Derby. I wrote this in advance, obviously, and it released a few days after the Kentucky Derby actually aired. But because of all my research I'd done, I actually felt like I had a little part in the horses that ran. And so I watched it on TV, and I was rooting for all the horses just because I couldn't pick a favorite. And it just showed me that like when you invest time in something, when you give it your all, how much you want to see that, mountaintop. And I felt the same way with the book itself. I was able to learn um, part of, American history that I never delved into before. And I came away with my perspectives broadened and more knowledge and more, I don't know if the word's compassion, but just more empathy for all the people who have ever had a horse, trained a horse, and wanted to win the roses.
Thank you. Grace?
For me, Carol, when you were explaining about the missionaries coming to South Africa and, how shocked they were, I think my understanding, when I was doing the research for this particular book, I always thought that missionaries went to a place and they gave up everything and, they're giving up all their wealth, their livelihood to do this mission work. It may have happened in certain places, but not so in Korea. Actually, they lived really well in Korea. So Koreans were very poor, and until like maybe 20, 30 years ago, the country itself, we were very poor. We went through so many wars. We were colonized by China or Japan. So much has happened in this small peninsula. So when the missionaries came, we were very poor. But then they brought like wood from the US to build their homes, like these big, massive homes. They brought appliances across the ocean. to use in Korea when we didn't have these appliances. So they lived this lavish lifestyle, which was shocking to me. And so one of the chapters is called Missiology of Whiteness. They brought this concept of whiteness, that they were superior over, South Africans, over South Americans or Asians, and really made us look horrible, that we were very bad people. And in order to become good people, we had to embrace their whiteness, this white supremacy, white superiority, and this white male God. So that was really shocking for me when I was researching that, they lived really well. And then their income was what they would have been paid in the US, which is enormously high, with the standard of living, was so poor in Korea. And then from their pay, they gave tiny, measly paychecks to those Koreans who were helping them. So that was a bit shocking to me. And it just reinforced all of this that I was trying to dismantle, to dismantle racism and whiteness, which was reinforced in Korea.
Thanks. We'll talk about that on the offsite when we have more time.
Yeah. I would love to hear more from.
Yeah. Julian.
Yeah, so I guess what surprised me most across the course of making this book was all the many books that it was along the way. I think that it originally started as just a book of like cute TV takes, like, oh, I never thought about that episode of Atlanta, or I hadn't considered how The West Wing is like a liberal fantasy of like a certain kind of American supremacy, right? And then as the book carried on, as I was going through more and more of these moments of encounter, and how do you navigate and maneuver through that? How do you create a reader experience that's going to make sense? More and more of these memories were happening in Mississippi. More and more of these memories were happening as I was watching myself kind of grow alongside me in the pages, right? And so I think that just seeing it transition from a book that was supposed to be just media analysis to more of a lyrical essay collection to more of a multi-genre like kind of exploration of self, and eventually kind of settling into this memoir and essays kind of format that it is now, is to see the trajectory of like 5 years of my life, and culminating in what I think is the best book I've ever written. So I was also surprised by that because it was a mess at first, but then it got it.
Great. Jenny.
I would say one of the surprises of this book or this process was really realizing the couple that is featured, which is an interracial, romance. So it's a Nigerian American woman and then say Italian American man, and also Tony's book also is an interracial couple. I think surprised at how little is represented in traditional Christian fiction. I mean, it's huge and independent, books. I mean, all over Amazon and other places, but how little, which then brought, it brings maybe a little bit of trepidation, or just like, how will people receive it? So I think it's been surprising to see how little that's really talked about when I'm looking at churches around me, and many of them, not all, but many of them are so much more diverse and multicultural than they have been in decades past. And so that we're just kind of now getting to the point where we're seeing more and more of that in traditional publishing. But I've also been surprised that, because before, when I started this process of wanting to publish a novel several years ago, really like that audience that I knew was going to be the target would be just African American audience. That's what kind of I was told, like that's who it is. So no one else is going to read a book featuring African American characters or Black characters or Nigerian American characters besides the African American audience. And I mean, and you're not, African American author. So I am surprised and so grateful, because even like ones like Tony, who is on here, and then other authors who are and have been actually that we haven't heard of, years past, who are putting out more and more books. Vanessa Miller, Robin W. Pearson, so many others who are putting out more books. And the books are being read by wider and wider audiences. So to see maybe a certain perspective just in a couple years be dismantled, where publishers thought, okay, it's only going to be this audience, and to see that no, a wider audience can receive an interracial romance, a wider audience can receive a novel, a nonfiction written by a Black author, written by an Asian author, an Indian author, like it is just so beautiful to see. And so yeah, so I was surprised by the lack of, but I'm pleasantly surprised by the reception actually that we're seeing lately for these type of books featuring these characters.
Well, I'm excited to be part of this diverse voices with Rodart, and of course, and Anita, you know, inviting me doing this, and I was so. I I was like, this is what we need. This is how we expose authors and share them, you know, so that others, because you always gravitate to what you know, and those are the authors that looks like you, that sounds like you, that talks like you, and you feel comfortable with them. I remember even when before I became director, I was a manager. And I used to have a book study group, and I told them that, you know, we're going to go around the world. We're going to get an author from each continent, you know, to discuss, I mean, to read and then discuss. And it was like, wow, you know, and I'm in my mind, I'm like, just wanted to open your eyes. There's more to just an author, you know what I mean? They all have the same problems, or not the same, but similar issues, and they the same people with the same feelings, and say, you know, a person that you could you know, receive not just accolades, but you know, just a wider range of people, and also give you an idea of how not just people in the United States, but outside of the United States are living. And I was so excited when Elenita invited me into this, you know, and I'm like, yeah, this is something that I like to do. And ever since, you know, it's what it is. It's diverse voices, and it's the only way to bring it across the spectrum, you know, instead of sometimes people, minorities struggle to get their book out there. You don't have the means sometimes, not you, I mean, people don't have means, and they may not have the connections and all that. But in this setting, you know, you're exposed to many more libraries, and libraries can put it in, you know, your books. And once people start reading, and they're like, oh, I like to read more of them, you know, or read more like. And of course, the ones that you're suggesting is also good for us to share across the spectrum. So I'm really excited always to do it, and I was so honored to be part of this panel. So thank you, all of you.
Yes, thank you so much. And we thank your sponsors, and the books are really great. And we're so happy that you've written them and that you're sharing your voices with us today. And for those in the audience, you can buy their books through Rodart, so don't forget to get your books.
So
Thank you.
thank you. And Anita,
So much.
you will connect me with them so that we can continue the conversations.
Yes.
Thank you.
Much
Thank you
obliged,
so
all.
much for having us.
Thank you guys for the honor of being here with you all.
All
Yeah,
the best
thank
for you.
you.
You might be
Take care.
surprised.
Thank you.
I'll invite you to the library and have them do a presentation.
Yeah, that would be great.
That's what I know.
Please invite.
Love that.
Would love to do that.
I'll
Thank
fly in for
you.
that.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Have a lovely
Take
day,
care.
everybody.
y'all.
Thank you.
Thank
All the
you.
best.
Nice to
Bye.
meet you all.
Bye-bye.